Welcome to Nerdology, where we dive into the science behind consumer behavior, sensory research, and the latest hot topics in behavioral science. Quick insights, expert reviews, and conference highlights, all in bite-sized form. Let's get nerdy. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Nerdology for Nerdoscientist, where we explore the science behind consumer behavior, perception, and what really drives people's choices. Once again, I'm Michelle Niedziela, behavioral neuroscientist, consultant, and sometimes a little bit of an AI experimenter. Today, I want to talk about something that's both exciting and a little unnerving: synthetic data, what it can do for us in research, and where the risks lie if we're not careful. Recently, I presented at the AChemS meeting, which is the Association for Chemoreception Sciences, on how generative AI tools like ChatGPT can be used to support consumer research. In this case, particularly on an emotions panel. And I talked about it not to replace real data, but to explore ideas, stress test designs, and troubleshoot our assumptions before we ever bring real participants into a study. To demonstrate, I ran a synthetic study on a deceptively tricky concept: freshness in home fragrance. Now, we all think we understand what fresh means, but if you really try to pin it down in a study, suddenly it's everywhere and also nowhere. So in this case, I decided to use ChatGPT to help define what the language of freshness is that consumers use. So I came up with different consumer personas and really explored what different definitions might look like, different words that consumers might use, like clean or citrusy, airy, powdery, watery, and a lot more. And then I talked with ChatGPT to explore how we might study this concept. I simulated a MaxDiff study where you might have consumers weigh which attributes they would think would be most important when choosing a home freshness fragrance product. And then I also had ChatGPT run an implicit association test to see how different attributes might play out across two popular brands like Febreze and Glade for their linen scents. Now, was this real data? No, but that's not the point. The point was to explore. So I wanted to explore which attributes consumers were doing the heavy lifting for freshness. Where there was redundancy or maybe more ambiguity in these types of words that consumers might use, and how consumers might respond differently based on, say, different brands or maybe context or even emotional framing. And this is where synthetic data can really shine. So, not as a substitute, but more as a design tool. So, it can actually be perfect for exploring these fuzzy type complex ideas like freshness. It can also be a great way to pilot hypotheses or to troubleshoot any sort of study logic that you might have. And it's really good for identifying gaps or blind spots before you actually spend the money and bring participants in fielding a costly test. It's like running a mental rehearsal with an AI-powered research assistant. You don't need perfect accuracy, you just need directional clarity. It helps you ask better questions, challenge assumptions, and really tighten up your methodology. And here's where things start to get a little bit serious, because at the same time as I was giving my AChemS talk, the DOJ indicted 8 people for submitting fraudulent research data, market research data, millions of dollars in fake responses, invented participants, and fabricated results. It was a lot like a European scandal that happened some years ago that I actually wrote a story on called Trust Me. So feel free to Google that if you're interested. And it is a stark reminder that with tools like AI, we now have new ways to simulate insights that can look really realistic. So new ways to fake them. And that's why transparency and ethics are more important than ever. Synthetic data can be a brilliant tool for research foresight, but only if we use it intentionally and disclose it clearly. So it's really great for thinking things through, but it is not a replacement for knowing. So, if you're a research, insights lead, or product developer wondering whether a study is worth running, or maybe how best to frame a really tough concept, using this sort of approach with the help of AI might help you pressure test your designs before it hits the field. Now, I've written up the whole process step by step in my latest blog post. So if you go to nerdoscientist.com and go to the blog, you can check it out. It's based on the AChemS talk and includes some visuals and prompts and results that I used, as well as some reflection on what worked and what surprised me and maybe what to watch out for. So you can find it on my blog, and I'll also post the link in the show notes. But thanks for listening. And as always, research smarter, ask better questions, and stay just the right amount of skeptical.